Ananda, when the good person who is cultivating samadhi has put an end to the thinking skandha, he is ordinarily free of dreaming and idle thinking, so he stays the same, whether in wakefulness or in sleep. His mind is aware, clear, empty, and still, like a cloudless sky, devoid of any coarse sense impressions. He contemplates everything in the world, the mountains, the rivers, and the earth, as reflections in a mirror, appearing without attachment and vanishing without any trace. They are simply received and reflected. He does away with all his old habits, and only the essential truth remains. From this point on, as the origin of production and destruction is exposed, he will completely see all the 12 categories of living beings in the 10 directions. Although he has not fathomed the source of their individual lives, he will see that they share a common basis of life, which appears as a mirage, shimmering and fluctuating, and is the ultimate pivotal point of the illusory sense faculties and sense objects. This is the region of the formation skandha. Once the basic nature of this shimmering fluctuation returns to its original clarity, his habits will cease, like waves subsiding, to become clear, calm water. This is the end of the formation skandha. This person will then be able to transcend the turbidity of living beings. Contemplating the cause of the formation skandha, one sees that subtle and hidden false thoughts are its source. Ananda, you should know that when the good person has obtained proper knowledge in his practice of samatha, his mind is unmoving, clear, and proper, and it cannot be disturbed by the 10 kinds of demons from the heavens. He is now able to intently and thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings. As the origin of each category becomes apparent, he can contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and pervasive fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate on that pervasive source, he could fall into error with 2 theories of the absence of cause. First, perhaps this person sees no cause for the origin of life. Why? Since he has completely destroyed the mechanism of production, he can, by means of the 800 merits of the eye organ, see all beings in the swirling flow of karma during 80,000 aeons, dying in one place and being reborn in another as they undergo transmigration. But he cannot see beyond 80,000 aeons. Therefore, he concludes that for the last 80,000 aeons, living beings in the 10 directions of this and other worlds have come into being without any cause. Because of this speculation, he will lose proper and pervasive knowledge, fall into externalism, and become confused about the bodhi nature. Second, perhaps this person sees no cause for the end of life. And why? Since he perceives the origin of life, he believes that people are always born as people, and birds are always born as birds, that crows have always been black, and swans have always been white, that humans and gods have always stood upright, and animals have always walked on 4 legs, that whiteness does not come from being washed, and blackness does not come from being dyed, and that there have never been, nor will there be, any changes for 80,000 eons. He says, as I now examine to the end of this life, I find the same holds true. In fact, I've never seen bodhi, So how can there be such a thing as the attainment of Bodhi? You should now realize that there is no cause for the existence of any phenomena. Because of this speculation, he will lose proper and pervasive knowledge, fall into externalism, and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the first external teaching, which postulates the absence of cause. Ananda, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is unmoving, clear, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate on its pervasive constancy, he could fall into error with four theories of pervasive permanence. First, as this person thoroughly investigates the mind and its states, he may conclude that both are causeless. Through his cultivation, he knows that in 20,000 aeons, as beings in the 10 directions undergo endless rounds of birth and death, they are never annihilated. Therefore, he speculates that the mind and its states are permanent. Second, as this person thoroughly investigates the source of the four elements, he may conclude that they are permanent in nature. Through his cultivation, he knows that in 40,000 aeons, as living beings in the 10 directions undergo births and deaths, their substances exist permanently and are never annihilated. Therefore, he speculates that this situation is permanent. Third, as this person thoroughly investigates the sixth sense faculty, the manas and the consciousness that grabs and receives, he concludes that the origin of mind, intellect, and consciousness is permanent. Through his cultivation, he knows that in 80,000 aeons, as all living beings in the 10 directions revolve in transmigration, this origin is never destroyed and exists permanently. Investigating this undestroyed origin, he speculates that it is permanent. Fourth, since this person has ended the source of thoughts, there is no more reason for them to arise. In the state of flowing, halting, and turning, the thinking mind, which was the cause of production and destruction, has now ceased forever, and so he naturally thinks that this is a state of non-production and non-destruction. As a result of such reasoning, he speculates that this state is permanent. Because of these speculations of permanence, he will lose proper and pervasive knowledge, fall into externalism, and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the second external teaching, which postulates pervasive permanence. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate about self and others, he could fall into error with theories of partial impermanence and partial permanence based on four distorted views. First, as this person contemplates the wonderfully bright mind pervading the 10 directions, he concludes that this state of profound stillness is the ultimate spiritual self. Then he speculates, my spiritual self, which is settled, bright, and unmoving, pervades the 10 directions. All living beings are within my mind, and there they are born and die by themselves. Therefore, my mind is permanent, while those who undergo birth and death there are truly impermanent. Second, instead of contemplating his own mind, This person contemplates in the 10 direction worlds as many as the Ganges sands. He regards as ultimately impermanent those worlds that are in aeons of decay, and as ultimately permanent those that are not in aeons of decay. Third, this person closely examines his own mind and finds it to be subtle and mysterious, like fine motes of dust, swirling in the 10 directions, unchanging in nature. And yet it can cause his body to be born and then to die. He regards that indestructible nature as his permanent intrinsic nature, and that which undergoes birth and death and flows forth from him as impermanent. Fourth, knowing that the skandha of thinking has ended, and seeing the flowing of the skandha of formations, this person speculates that the continuous flow of the skandha of formations is permanent, and that the skandhas of form, feeling, and thinking, which have already ended, are impermanent. Because of these speculations of impermanence and permanence, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the third external teaching, which postulates partial permanence. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate about the making of certain distinctions, he could fall into error with 4 theories of finiteness. First, this person speculates that the origin of life flows and functions ceaselessly. He judges that the past and the future are finite, and that the continuity of the mind is infinite. Second, as this person contemplates an interval of 80,000 aeons, he can see living beings, but earlier than 80,000 aeons is a time of stillness in which he cannot hear or see anything. He regards as infinite that time in which nothing is heard or seen, and as finite that interval in which living beings are seen to exist. Third, this person speculates that his own pervasive knowledge is infinite, and that all other people appear within his awareness, and yet since he himself has never perceived the nature of their awareness, he says they have not obtained an infinite mind, but have only a finite one. Fourth, this person thoroughly investigates the formation skandhas to the point that it becomes empty. Based on what he sees in his mind, he speculates that each and every living being in his given body is half living and half dead. From this he concludes that everything in the world is half finite and half infinite. Because of these speculations about the finite and the infinite, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the fourth external teaching, which postulates finiteness. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate on what he knows and sees, he could fall into error with 4 distorted, false theories, which are total speculation based on the sophistry of immortality. First, this person contemplates the source of transformations. Seeing the movement and flow, he says there is change. Seeing the continuity, he says there is constancy. Where he can perceive something, he says there is production. Where he cannot perceive anything, he says there is destruction. He says that the unbroken continuity of causes is increasing, and that the pauses within the continuity are decreasing. He says that the arising of all things is existence, and that the perishing of all things is non-existence. The light of reason shows that his application of mind has led to inconsistent views. If someone comes to seek the Dharma, asking about its meaning, he replies, I'm both alive and dead, both existent and non-existent, both increasing and decreasing. He always speaks in a confusing way, causing that person to forget what he was going to say. Second, this person attentively contemplates his mind and finds that everything is non-existent. He has a realization based on non-existence. When someone comes to ask him questions, he replies with only one word. He only says no. Aside from saying no, he does not speak. Third, this person attentively contemplates his mind and finds that everything is existent. He has a realization based on existence. When anyone comes to ask him questions, he replies with only one word. He only says yes. Aside from saying yes, he does not speak. Fourth, this person perceives both existence and non-existence. Experiencing this branching, his mind becomes confused. When anyone comes to ask questions, he tells them, existence is also non-existence, but within non-existence there is no existence. It is all sophistry and does not stand up under scrutiny. Because of these speculations, which are empty sophistries, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the fifth external teaching, which postulates four distorted, false theories that are total speculation based on the sophistry of immortality. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate on the endless flow, he could fall into error with the confused idea that forms exist after death. He may strongly identify with his body and say that form is himself, or he may see himself as perfectly encompassing all wills and say that he contains form, or he may perceive all external conditions as contingent upon himself and say that form belongs to him, or he may decide that he relies on the continuity of the formation skandha and say that he is within form. In all of these speculations, he says that forms exist after death. Expanding this idea, he comes out with 16 cases of the existence of forms. Then he may speculate that afflictions are always afflictions, and bodhi is always bodhi, and the two exist side by side without contradicting each other. Because of these speculations about what exists after death, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the sixth external teaching, which postulates confused theories of the existence of forms after death in the realm of the five skandhas. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate on the skandhas of form, feeling, and thinking, which have already ended, he could fall into error with the confused idea that forms do not exist after death. Seeing that his form is gone, his physical shape seems to lack a cause. As he contemplates the absence of thought, there is nothing to which his mind can become attached. Knowing that his feelings are gone, he has no further involvements. Those skandhas have vanished. Although there is still some coming into being, there is no feeling or thought, and he concludes that he is like grass or wood. Since those qualities do not exist at present, how can there be any existence of forms after death? Because of his examinations and comparisons, he decides that after death there is no existence. Expanding the idea, he comes out with 8 cases of the non-existence of forms. From that, he may speculate that nirvana and cause and effect are all empty, that they are mere names and ultimately do not exist. Because of those speculations that forms do not exist after death, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the 7th external teaching, which postulates confused theories of the non-existence of forms after death in the realm of the 5 skandhas. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. In this state where the skandha of formations remains, but the skandhas of feeling and thinking are gone, if he begins to speculate that there is both existence and non-existence, thus contradicting himself, he could fall into error with confused theories that deny both existence and non-existence after death. Regarding form, feeling, and thinking, he sees that existence is not really existence. Within the flow of the formation skandha, he sees that non-existence is not really non-existence. Considering back and forth in this way, he thoroughly investigates the realms of these skandhas and derives an 8-fold negation of forms. No matter which skandha is mentioned, he says that after death it neither exists nor does not exist. Further, because he speculates that all formations are changing in nature, an insight flashes through his mind, leading him to deny both existence and non-existence. He cannot determine what is unreal and what is real. Because of these speculations that deny both existence and non-existence after death, the future is murky to him, and he cannot say anything about it. Therefore, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the 8th external teaching, which postulates confused theories that deny both existence and non-existence after death in the realm of the 5 skandhas. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate that there is no existence after death, he could fall into error with 7 theories of the cessation of existence. He may speculate that the body will cease to exist, or that when desire has ended, there is cessation of existence, or that after suffering has ended, there is cessation of existence, or that when bliss reaches an ultimate point, there is cessation of existence, or that when renunciation reaches an ultimate point, there is cessation of existence. Considering back and forth in this way, he exhaustively investigates the limits of the seven states and sees that they have already ceased to be and will not exist again. Because of these speculations that existence ceases after death, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the ninth external teaching, which postulates confused theories of the cessation of existence after death in the realm of the five skandhas. Further, in his practice of samadhi, the good person's mind is firm, unmoving, and proper, and can no longer be disturbed by demons. He can thoroughly investigate the origin of all categories of beings and contemplate the source of the subtle, fleeting, and constant fluctuation. But if he begins to speculate on existence after death, he could fall into error with five theories of nirvana. He may consider the heavens of the desire realm as a true refuge, because he contemplates the extensive brightness and longs for it. Or he may take refuge in the first dhyana, because there his nature is free from worry. Or he may take refuge in the second dhyana, because there his mind is free from suffering. Or he may take refuge in the third dhyana, because he delights in its extreme joy. Or he may take refuge in the fourth dhyana, reasoning that suffering and bliss are both ended there, and that he will no longer undergo transmigration. These heavens are subject to outflows, but in his confusion, he thinks that they are unconditioned, and he takes these five states of tranquility to be refuge of supreme purity. Considering back and forth in this way, he decides that these five states are ultimate. Because of these speculations about five kinds of immediate nirvana, he will fall into externalism and become confused about the Bodhi nature. This is the 10th external teaching, which postulates confused theories of the five kinds of immediate nirvana in the realm of the five skandhas. Ananda, all 10 of these crazy explanations may occur in dhyana, as one's mental effort interacts with the formation skandha. That is why these insights appear. Dull and confused living beings do not evaluate themselves. Encountering such situations, they mistake their confusion for understanding and say that they have become sages, thereby uttering a great lie. They will fall into the relentless hells. After my nirvana, all of you should pass on the Tathagata's teachings, transmitting and revealing them to those in the Dharma ending age, so that living beings everywhere can awaken to these truths. Do not let demons arise in their minds and cause them to commit grave offenses. Offer protection so that wrong views will be eradicated. Teach them to awaken to true principles in body and mind, so that they do not stray off the unsurpassed path. Do not let them aspire to and be content with small attainments. You should become kings of great enlightenment and serve as guides of purity.